In this video, I will show how I make fresh milled whole wheat spaghetti pasta. The full written recipe will be in the description box down below. Thank you for watching. First, I start by measuring out my grain. Now, I am doubling the recipe, so the amounts that you see go into my bowl will be double what I'm going to speak. But you start by adding 250 grams of wheat berries into your grain mill. I am using Knead wheat berries, but I also make this with hard white as well. And the amount that I'm making is for 8 to 10 servings of pasta, but the written recipe will be for the 4 to 5 servings of pasta. Now I'm adding my milled flour into my mixer bowl and just using a pastry brush to brush off any excess flour into the bowl. Now it's time to add the eggs. You will need 2 eggs. Again, I am doubling the recipe, so that's why I have 4. Make a well in the center of the flour and crack all of your eggs directly into the flour. I'm now going to add my salt and my water. I'm going to put my mixer bowl on top of my scale so that I can weigh my salt, and you're going to add 5 grams of salt. I also have a small bowl of water here. The recipe calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons of water, but I would suggest only adding in 1 tablespoon initially so that as the dough mixes, you can add more in gradually. Now I'm mixing those ingredients in my Kitchenaid mixer on speed 2. I'm just using this to get the ingredients incorporated. I am still going to hand knead because this is a very firm dough and it would be way too much for a Kitchenaid mixer. As you can see, it's looking very dry, so I'm going to go ahead and add in another tablespoon of water and continue to let that mix. It's starting to come together. As you can see, it's starting to clump, but I am going to go ahead and add another tablespoon of water because it is still looking too dry. I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon of water. This would be my 5th tablespoon of water, but if you are following the written recipe, then this would be your 3rd or 4th tablespoon. And now that I don't see any more dry pieces of flour, I'm going to go ahead and stop my mixer and start to hand knead the dough. As I take it out of the mixer bowl, you can see it is still clumpy. It's not fully together yet. All of the flour is basically hydrated though, and as I knead it, you'll see how the consistency of the dough changes. I'm going to knead the dough for about 5 to 7 minutes or so, and as I go along in the process, I'm going to show you guys how the dough looks so you can get an idea of how your dough should look when you're kneading it. I am baby wearing while I'm doing this, so if you see a tiny head, that is my 4-month-old who likes to make an appearance in my videos. Okay, so now let's take our first look at the dough, and as you can see, it is still cracking and it breaks apart very easily, so that lets me know that I have to continue to knead just to strengthen the gluten a little bit more. When I knead, I take the dough and I fold it in half and I push it away. I'm trying to demonstrate that here. Folding and push. Fold and push. Fold and push. Fold and push. If for some reason your dough is feeling incredibly dry, you can wet your hands as you're kneading. I keep my little bowl of water on the side there, so if I'm starting to feel dry bits of the bran from the dough, I just wet my hands as I'm kneading. Now let's take a second look at our dough, and as you can see, it is a lot smoother than it was the first time, but I believe it can be just a little bit smoother, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to knead for a couple more minutes. And I've decided to wet my hands a little here because the dough was feeling just a tad dry, but I don't want to overdo it. If you do wet your hands a bit because it's feeling dry, it will feel a little squishy at first. It's fine, it's normal. It will all stay together and come together and be fine. This isn't bread, so of course we're not looking for a window pane, but we do want it to have a good, decent gluten structure so that our pasta doesn't break apart so easily. And as you can see, it's so much smoother now, but I'm gonna knead it for like 1 more minute just to make sure that it's as smooth as can be and that I have a nice pasta. As you can see, while I'm kneading, I like to look at my dough every couple minutes just to see how it's progressing. This will allow me to be able to tell when it's been kneaded enough. Now the dough is much softer. It's still a very firm dough, but as you can see, when I press on it, it's not cracking or looking like it wants to break or tear. So that lets me know that it's good to go. So I'm putting it in a plastic bag for at least 30 minutes, but I will sometimes let it sit for up to 2 hours. If it's going to be more than 2 hours, I will stick it in my fridge. You could even stick it in the freezer at this point if you wanted to as well. So my pasta dough has been sitting for a couple hours at this point, so I'm getting my pasta attachment onto my Kitchenaid, and I will link the one that I'm using in the description down below. So it's important to work in small batches when it comes to rolling out the pasta. So I am cutting this in fourths because, again, I'm making a large batch of 8 to 10 servings. If you are doing the written recipe of the 4 to 5 servings, you can just cut your dough in half. But even with the smaller size, you can still cut it in fourths, and that will make it even more manageable to roll out. So I lightly flour my table, and I use a roller just to roll out the dough just a little before it goes into the pasta attachment. I would say I'm rolling it out to maybe 1/4 of an inch thick. This pasta attachment has a silver dial on the side, and we start on the 1 setting, and this is gonna turn our dough into a thin sheet. And as we increase from setting 1 to setting 4, it's going to make it thinner and thinner before we turn it into the actual spaghetti noodles. You want your dough to be lightly floured so that it doesn't stick at all in the pasta attachment. So I'm running it through each setting 1 time. So the 1 setting I go through once, the 2 setting I go through once, the 3 setting I go through once, and then I switch it to 4 and I put it through the actual spaghetti side of the attachment. So the middle portion of this attachment is the sheeter. It turns the pasta to sheets. And then on one side you have a fettuccine side that turns it into fettuccine noodles, and then the other side is the spaghetti side, and that's the side that I'm going to be using today. And it's very important to flour your sheet of pasta before running it through the spaghetti or the fettuccine side. It's important to flour it again. That way, when the pasta comes out, it does not clump together. Once it comes out, I just take it and I twirl it into a little pasta nest, and I just lay it on the pan, and I'll sprinkle a little bit of flour over it again just to make sure that the pasta doesn't stick together while it sits. Now I'm running the second sheet of pasta dough through the spaghetti side of the attachment. So I initially cut my dough into fourths, and I run that through 3 times. And then once I get to the part where I make it into pasta, I like to cut it in half so that I don't get 2-foot long spaghetti noodles. And I'll explain that again when I get to that part. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate one more of my fourths of my pasta dough. So again, I am flattening it a little to about 1/4 inch thickness so that I can put it through the middle sheeter portion of the pasta attachment. I'm making sure that my dial is on the 1 setting. I'm going to run it through the 1 setting 1 time. Once it's through, I change the dial to 2, and I run it through one time, and then I change the dial to 3 and I run it through one time. And then I cut that long strip in half so that I don't have a 2-foot long pasta noodle. And I lightly flour it. This way the spaghetti noodles do not stick together. This is an important step. Do not forget to flour your pasta. If you do forget though, you will just let your dough rest and flatten it out and roll it through again. So once I got to the 4th setting, I went ahead and ran it through the spaghetti side. So you'll see me run the 2nd sheet through the spaghetti side as well. So I'm just going to repeat it. So you run it through once on the 1 setting, the 2 setting, and the 3 setting, and then you change it to the 4 setting, and you then run it through the actual spaghetti side of the pasta attachment. I don't know if other pasta attachments are the same as the one that I have here, but those are just some basic instructions for this kind. But if you're already familiar with your own pasta attachment, please be sure to follow the instructions that comes with your individual attachment. I used to be so intimidated when it came to making pasta. To me, it seemed so much more difficult than making bread, but once I actually just decided to start doing it, I came to realize it's so much easier than I thought it was. You don't have to wait for anything to rise. You don't have to be concerned with it taking hours like how bread takes. It's just a very simple process. It's only about 4 ingredients. And once you get the consistency of the dough right, it's really easy from there. And if for some reason you do make a mistake when it comes to the rolling it through the pasta attachment, or if your noodles are sticking together, all you have to do is just knead it together, let it rest again for about 30 minutes so that the gluten can relax, and just run it through again. I've come to realize that there's really no point in being intimidated when it comes to cooking really anything. It's just food, and for the most part, it'll still be edible even if it doesn't look Instagram worthy or Pinterest worthy. It's about getting homemade, healthy, nourishing food on the table to be able to nourish your body, nourish your family, and it's not always about it looking or being perfect. There's a saying that I once heard, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it says, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And sometimes we can be so hung up on something coming out perfect that we don't even try because we're just afraid of it not being perfect. But good is still good, and it's good enough. And with time and with practice, it will be more like perfect. So I encourage anyone who's watching this who is feeling intimidated to make pasta, or to make anything for that matter, to just give it a try. It's just food, and it's nothing to be intimidated or scared of. If it doesn't come out good the first time, just try again. So I am almost done here with my little pasta nests. I make 8 pasta nests for my 8 to 10 servings of pasta. So when it's time to cook this, you boil your water. You can salt your water lightly if you like, but do keep in mind that the recipe does have salt in the pasta. But you boil your water, and then you're going to boil the noodles for about 2 to 3 minutes. Because this is fresh pasta, it doesn't take long at all to cook. And now once mine is done cooking, I do rinse mine with cold water. I'm sure every Italian is probably cringing by me saying this, but I do. And I do that because I don't want it to continue to cook. I find that whole wheat pasta can be a little bit more fragile. So I do run mine under a little bit of cold water after it's done cooking. I'm sorry to every Italian that is listening to me say that. Of course, you don't have to run yours under cold water. You can just strain it and eat it as you see fit. Here are my noodles after they were done cooking. And here is the spaghetti that I made for dinner that night, along with the garlic knots. I do have a video posted for the garlic knots as well. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you tried this recipe, I would love to hear how it turned out for you. Thank you so much for watching.